Alrighty, I want to give the conclusion to my microphone shootout video. Earlier today and last night, I basically switched microphones. I was using the Samson Q9U dynamic microphone as opposed to my current condenser microphone, the Samson G-Track Pro. Now, both of them are pretty good microphones. This one here, I see it as the poor man's Shure SM7B. And mostly I was satisfied, especially during my stream last night, but I ran into a little minor issue where I was going to join another stream today on another channel, and I felt like my audio levels were just not as loud as everyone else. It probably would have been fine, but I wanted to, get them louder. So I tried playing around. This is the mid boost. I think this is like the low cut. Basically, like, this will make it more bassy. This will cut out some of the treble, I think. Gotta double check that. And we can actually see that in the instruction manual if we simply RTFM read the bleeping manual. And so over here we actually have everything labeled here. So number 5 is that cut switch, and it says low cut. When engaged, it'll cut low frequencies by 3 dB at 200 Hz. Only use if you feel like the signal is muddy or too bass heavy. So, yeah, that's good to know. And then the other one is the mid-level, and this will boost it up, give you more boosted mid-range, which is better for spoken applications. So, essentially, like, mid-ranges are somewhere between bass and treble, high pitch and the rumble sound. It's going to be in between those two. And when I wasn't satisfied with everything I was doing to goose up the volume levels or the gain, I then plugged it in via XLR cable. But to do that, I have to use this guy here. This is really more of a guitar interface, so it's probably not well suited to this particular task, but it was adequate. I've used it before, and on my other machine, it gave me satisfactory audio and seemed to be quite fine. Granted, I wasn't comparing it to anyone else's audio. Maybe everyone else had their microphones set too loudly. Maybe mine is fine and theirs just too loud. But I did have to bring the level pretty much near the top to get good audio levels, no doubt about it. It was helpful to use the output monitoring in real time just to get an idea of like how well tuned it is or whatnot. But it's really what you do inside the computer's settings that matter. And so when you're using the condenser mic, you cannot change the gain levels in the Windows sound settings. But when you're using the this one here, the dynamic microphone, you do adjust the gain settings. So usually I right click on the sound speaker icon where the volume is. I click on sounds, brings you straight to the sound control panel. And then we go to recording devices. Now, the Samson G-Track Pro cannot touch it. I can mute the audio, that is it. I can pick the, quality setting, which I put it on the top at 2 channel. Well, it doesn't let me do 1 channel, but 24-bit at 48 kilohertz. And, some people might opt for 44. I haven't had any problems switching between the two, so I've been keeping it at 48. 16-bit would probably be fine. Certainly, higher is not necessary. On the other hand, when I had the Samson Q9U hooked up, I was able to, adjust the gain level. And when you go to the advanced tab, you have a lot more options. It lets you go to, like, I think above 96-bit. But when you get to that point, especially higher, you're getting to a point where the microphone, or at least the computer, would be capable, if given a good microphone, the computer could differentiate between the sound of a rocket and a bumblebee making a buzzing sound. It's like almost like contrast ratio. But in reality, the coil is not going to be attenuated to that broad range. And so it's not really necessary to have that high level of bit depth. More likely, if you were, combining with other audio tracks that were higher quality, maybe, some example. But anyway, bottom line is, when using this mic, you could goose up the gain level over here. Then you would go into OBS and do further adjusting. You would usually, have a slider here. You can do some gain adjustment over here, etc., etc. And then you can apply filters. And that is a big part because we do have inherently, we do have fans. We have background noise from my CPU fan from the 4 hard drives in my computer. And basically the expander will suppress the background noises or any noises that are below the 24 dB threshold. Conversely, the compressor will bring it up, but well, basically it'll prevent us from getting into the red zone. If I start 1, 2, it'll prevent me from topping out completely. So it does go into the red zone a bit, but it doesn't like overstay its welcome. So that's essentially what's going on there. And basically, once the audio level exceeds 24 dB, it's going to push it back down by a 10-to-1 ratio. That is the basic thing going on there. So far, we got that covered. Now what? Well, what is my verdict? What is my conclusion? Well, I liked the sound. I did, and I mounted it. I did a live stream last night where I had this mounted to this, attachment. I had it pointing at me because the key with these is that you do have to have, you do have to speak like within 4 to 8 inches of it. Closer the better. They do not have good, distance or off, axis range. Like this one here has a cardioid pattern. Basically a heart-shaped pattern that if I speak within this area, it will hear me. But if I speak closer, I will get better bass than if I sit back talking here, for example. But overall, I found this to be more flexible, whereas this, not only was the sound level low, but yeah, I could not move around a lot. Which wasn't a big deal because I was pretty stationary during my stream last night. But really, when I wanted to join this stream today on another channel, and I noticed my levels were lower than everyone, I was trying to just bring it, equalize it, have the same audio levels. And that's something I'm going to explore a bit further. But for now, I'm just going to, leave this in the server room because having a directional polar pattern seems to be desirable. If that is the key. So the polar pattern means you speak into the front, as opposed to the cardioid pattern. This microphone actually has a switch on it for 3 different modes. Figure 8, cardioid, and omni. Omnidirectional is all around. Figure 8 is basically front and back only. So if you put it in the middle of a table, it's got like a really simple mic stand that would, facilitate putting it in the center of a table like this. So you can do that if you have people on, maybe an interviewer and an interviewee. The pop filter is essential on this. They do sell a small pop filter, but this was like $10 less expensive, so I went with this one because even though it's a little bulky, I actually kind of found that you got to get that gooseneck positioned in the right way, or you're going to bump into it all the time. It's quite frustrating. Beyond that, the gooseneck is wreaking havoc with my chroma key right now, but I'm going to leave that alone because once the sun sets, that tends to change the lighting situation anyway, and I can sort it out later. Maybe I'll put like a matte paint on here. I feel like a matte paint finish would be ideal instead of this brightly bright, what do you call it, reflective glossy metal. If I really want, I don't know if this is a bad idea, but I could try doing that. But this is not, so this is like not even related to what we're doing right now. Just this is me spurging out a little bit. Alright, so I'll explore that later. Like, I'm not crazy about it. Just trying to do some experimentation here. If I can get this to like, not be so bright and shiny, that would be nice. That almost looks better. No, actually, it does not look better. It looks worse. All right, so I'll airbrush it later. So yeah, bottom line is that's the big thing is like if you're streaming, you're gonna either need to buy the $20 pop filter or get something like this one here with the annoying gooseneck, which, I mean, once you position it right, it's not a big deal. It's just something to be aware of. So what's the verdict? Well, right now, obviously, I'm using this microphone because I can sit back, and that is the verdict. If I had to give you the verdict in a nutshell, I would say both microphones are fine. The Samsung G-Track Pro condenser microphone and the Q9U dynamic microphone. Both of them are fine microphones. This one here is potentially a competitor to the Shure SM7B if you're looking for like a low cost alternative. $160 versus $400. This microphone is where it's at in that regard. Some complaints I heard about it, well, mainly when you have an XLR cable plugged in, which is going to be, you know, one of these here. The way this is designed, it's going to pick up vibration. It's going to pick up vibration. Whoops. Just like right now. But like what I mean is you have the cable plugged in, and that is going to translate into the microphone. That was one minor complaint I heard from people who review these sort of things. As for the other one, the Shure SM7B, well, they have a different design. Essentially, the plug for the XLR port is mounted to the pole here. And so there's a thin cable going from here to here. Then there's a female port that goes there. And we can actually demonstrate that by looking up pictures or even the Amazon page for the Shure SM7B. And you can see right there what I'm talking about. Thin cable, female XLR port. And from what I figured out, it looks like that's there to deal with the vibration that would otherwise translate through the cable itself. Because, I mean, you know, copper strands conductive, but copper, metal in general, you know, it's going to translate vibration. On USB Type-C, I was pretty happy with it. I was using it on USB Type-C. I only bothered to hook it up to XLR to see if I can get more amplification, more gain. Now, that being said, I think that any issue I was having was related to the fact that I was using the M Audio Fast Track. This is not really, you know, specifically for microphones. It is for guitars. And so, you know, we do have an XLR port for a microphone. You know, you got some toggles there. This is the volume level that affects the input gain. Then you can mix it for output monitoring. And you got your output level. But overall, it sounded pretty good when I did it in the room with my server. Because the server rack is very noisy. You know, you got like a single computer with like dozens of fans and literally 12 hard drives and like, I don't know, 6 or 10 fans in there. And it gets like, you know, it's very loud. So having the polar pattern, meaning that it's highly directional, you got to speak straight into the dynamic microphones to get optimal sound. The cardioid pattern is not omnidirectional, but it's got a heart-shaped pattern where it's going to hear the best sound from up here, especially the proximity effect. You're going to get more bassy up close than if you're sitting back here, it's going to fall off. But using the audio filters in OBS, I can do that because even if I do lose some of my bass frequencies, the compressor filter will prevent me from being too loud if I get close. The expander filter will suppress background noise, so if I stop speaking, as you can see, when I toggle it on and off, you can hear the fans in my computer. If I had a challenge, let's say the air conditioner was making too much noise, I could use the VST. And what's interesting is ever since I retuned my microphone and adjusted it like crazy, my noise floor is much lower than it was before. So I don't know what to make of that. But I mostly disable this, but it's a good plugin to have. Sometimes, because when you use these various noise suppression plugins, one problem you might encounter is if you talk low and then you stop speaking, yeah, it'll be silent when you stop speaking. But the minute you speak low, it'll bring up the volume level so that it can hear you in the yellow zone, which is, you know, down here. But it also brings in a lot of background noise. So it'll be like every time you start speaking a little bit, you'll hear in the background, and then it'll fade away. So that was a little tricky to manage. Some of that could be managed by, messing with these settings here, attack and release time. Whole other topic. You can get really into the weeds, but I found this to be a real simple way to, more accurately deal with very specific frequencies. So if you're getting a lot of bass rumble or, weird background noise, you can basically tell it to detect that noise, and then anything below the red line will be eliminated. And you can see when I'm not speaking, there's a faint yellow line. Just about all of those frequencies are being blocked out right now. So that's the gist of the VST plugin versus the compressor expander. And my reasoning for mentioning it is, as I was goosing up the gain on the dynamic microphone, I was picking up more background noise, and so I was forced to deal with it. Now, I may yet buy a modern, high quality, something that's newer, because this is really old here. A more modern, thing, interface, or something like that, a preamp or something. And I might find that I'm happier with this microphone. But as it stands right now, I'm having a better experience. I find that this condenser microphone is more flexible for my needs. But if you are, in a high quality application or a situation where you demand high quality, this may still serve you well. And if you're doing a podcast, it may serve you well. That's why I thought it would be good, like live streaming, joining other people's streams. I figured it made sense. But as it is right now, this is more of use to me as my noisy room microphone, if that's number one. And number two, for travel, I have a portable condenser, but if I needed like a quality travel mic, yeah, this could fit the bill, assuming I can resolve the, like the low level, the amplification level, the preamp, whatever you want to call it. I need to get that solved, but if I can, I think we can, have a better situation. So yeah, with that, let me just go and find something here now. I want to look at the specifications because I think this is going to illuminate a little bit more. And so if we do like Shure SM7B specifications, we can put this side by side. Whoops, did not mean to do that. I do not care if I have the PDF document. I just want to see these two. Here we are. This is what really matters here. From the top. Dynamic moving coil versus a condenser with a humbucker coil, which requires phantom power, which is supplied by the built-in USB interface. 50 to 20 hertz, 50 to 20 hertz. So theoretically, they have the same frequency response. So, $130 versus $160. Okay, happy camper. The SM7B is also a cardioid pattern. So, I'm mixing up my microphones here. So from the top here real quick. So we're talking about the Shure SM7B, which is the popular microphone that every podcaster and their mother uses. And did I actually pull up a picture of that? So yeah, we're talking about this microphone here. The Shure SM7B and the Samson Q9U dynamic microphone. Both of these are dynamic microphones. And getting back to the top here. So both of them are dynamic microphones, but this one here in my hand has a unidirectional cardioid pattern, which is also known as a polar pattern, which seems a little confusing to me, but okay, so you have a heart-shaped pattern as long as you speak straight into it, like within 4 to 8 inches. So you got to speak closer. If this, you could do 12 to 14 inches. You could do like, 8 to 12 inches, something like that. You got a pretty broad distancing range on this condenser, whereas on the dynamic in my hand here, you have a much closer range. But both of them have the same frequency response. That is what matters. Both of them are 50 to 20 hertz. The output impedance is 150 ohm versus 250 ohm. That might explain why I felt like the levels were a little bit on the low side on my microphone. max sensitivity on the XLR is negative 57 dBV. Pascal is 1 kilohertz. 1 kilohertz open circuit voltage. USB is different on the, because this one has both USB and XLR. Negative 16 dB, blah, blah. It actually seems like it's more sensitive using an XLR cable. So, yeah, that's going to warrant experimentation with a better interface or preamp. Hum pickup. Now, this was actually the big one here. Like, when you start cranking up your gain, you start picking up a hum, especially if the fans in my computer are running, but not only the fans. And it says that 60 hertz is equivalent to whatever the heck SPL MOE is. This one doesn't have a hum pickup. At least I don't see it here, so I can't compare. 11 dB. Polarity. Positive pressure on diaphragm produces positive voltage on pin 2 with respect to pin 3. Then we have some diagrams here showing the cardioid pattern and some of the sensitivity levels. Honestly, I'm not quite seeing an apples to oranges or apples to apples comparison. That's what I was really hoping for, was a more direct comparison. They are comparable in many ways, but the Shure microphone seems to pull a few extra stops. The only issue with the Shure microphone, in my opinion, is the lack of USB. I feel like, for $400, I think they could throw it in, but I do understand why they don't, because they're marketing it to people who don't really care for or want that, So, okay, cool. So, yeah, that basically concludes the topic at hand. I think we've covered all of the ground. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave a comment. And for now, we shall end transmission.